Good evening and welcome to the final live members surgery of 2021. My name is Scott Haslam, president of the Leeds #1 Amalgamate branch of the CWU. In tonight's show, I'm joined by the Deputy General Secretary, Terry Pullinger. Hi, Terry, and thanks for the invitation, accepting the invitation, rather.
It's no problem, Scott.
So, as I've said, this is the last surgery of the year, so let's make this episode reach as many members as possible. Please share, tag whoever, and if you haven't already done so, why not consider liking the CW Leeds North East pages, subscribing to the YouTube channel, following us on Twitter, and not least, subscribing to the podcast, which this will be available shortly. So, these surgeries are designed to give you the opportunity to mould the CWU. So, don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you with any questions or comments. So I'd like to get the session going and head over to Terry Pullinger. So thanks again, Terry, for joining us.
Oh, that's not a problem, Scott, as I already said.
We got a technical point.
What's the matter? We all right?
Hello?
Hello?
Are we frozen? Oh, well, it looks like we've got a Wi-Fi.
Scott, you still there?
Is it me? Looking for... Scott? Yes. I don't know if it's my end or your end, Terry. Can you see and hear me? Oh.
Yeah, I can. Do you want me to try and come back on?
Is that any better? Are we back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Obviously, a blip at my end. I thought you were all frozen. I beg your pardon. Jesus, I apologise there. Technical. It does happen. I am the techie geek. Yeah, I'm the one with the problem. So I apologise about that. Did we? What was the introduction okay, or have we stalled again?
No, we've not started yet, Scott. We was waiting for you, mate.
Hello.
I don't know if anyone, Scott, I don't know if anyone else can hear me, but it says I'm on the show and everyone can see.
Oh, right. Okay. Fine. It's just, it keeps freezing. So again, I don't know if it's or not.
Perhaps someone could message you if they can hear okay. So, I'll carry on.
Again, I don't know what. Well, apparently Graham is saying that we can hear both of you. So can Leslie. That's good. So yeah, effectively,
okay.
I want to review this year, Terry. So if you want to kick off with your review of this year, and then I'll see what I can check my internet.
Okay, just to good evening, everybody. If everyone can hear me, and just to. Right. Just to add to the reality, if the dog kicks off during this, apologies in advance. So if we're talking about the year, really, the last year we've had, it's been an extremely difficult year. Of course, everybody knows that. Still carrying on with the COVID. That's effectively now nearly 2 years. People have been having to work with that. Our members as key workers done an absolutely magnificent job, and want to thank everybody for that. And certainly any of the problems that are attributing to, I think, unbalanced in many ways, negative media reports is nothing to do with our members. Our members have just been absolutely terrific, and I've tried to make that defence if anyone's asked me in the media. As for the year itself, I think it's very easy for people to get distracted by the moment and some of the problems that we've had. But I think in all honesty, not taking any of them, not disrespecting the problems that people have had locally. whether it's because of COVID, whether it's because of the revision activity, etc. If it's anything to do with the revision activity and some of the change, we have to remember that's what we signed up to when we made our agreement, and we voted on it unanimously that we would do the revision activity. I'll come down to I'll come on to how that's landed in a minute. But from my perspective, it's very important from a leadership point of view that I keep my eye on the prize, and all of us should do that are leaders in this union. And I don't forget, not for a moment, what we fought for as a trade union for over 4 years, which is the right to have our say about the future of this industry, protect our jobs, protect this great public service, and protect the employment, standard living and retirement security of our members, which something so, that type of security so lacking in the world of work today. And many companies are still coming under the cosh, as we well know. So that's what we set out. That's what we wanted to do. That's what we fought for. We got rid of the likes of Rico back. We managed to get ourselves back in a position. We already had the 4 pillars agreement, which they tried to renege on, but that is still committed to in the pathway to change agreement. And we got the pathway to change agreement, which, of course, we signed up to. We got the extra second hour of the shorter working week. There was a number of things. I think there was 71 issues that we had to try to get done within this year, and certainly by October, mainly because of the 4 years of stagnation, but also because of the financial situation in the company. So you have to remember at that time, before we got that agreement, the company were predicting between 4 and 900 million pound loss. They'd already reported something like a 1.29 million pound, 100 million pound loss that year in 2020. And we were staring in the face of job losses. We were staring in the face of attacks on our terms and conditions, on attendance procedures getting far more stricter, modern day slavery with new technology. That all those things were on the table. They'd been tabled in the talks with the regime at that time under the Rico back regime. And then when he left, the acting CEO, Stuart Simpson, at the time as well. And all of that got removed with a pathway to change. And it put us back in a sensible position of trying to take the company forward with a mutual interest agenda. And that's what we've tried to do. And everyone's seen the results. So despite all the noise that's come out of revision activity, all the struggle people have had because of lack of resourcing, etc., pressures in the workplace, which I know are real, and I know that's the reality for people under the roof in the workplace. And we've tried to put in a number of interventions to correct that. The company itself, obviously, is now in a far better position, recording a profit, where they'd stopped giving money to shareholders. They're giving money to shareholders again. Well, that gives us oxygen for the next lot of things that we want in terms of pay rises, in terms of further shorter working week. Our agenda is still there. But I understand how the local issues have impacted on people, and how we've got to deal with them, and we are trying to deal with them. And in fact, in a lot of places now, I think people are getting on top of the quality of service. Been out there and done visits, gone into sites, have seen some of the problems. And some of the problems are ones we've got to deal with for the future, because you can see when you go into our delivery offices, for example, many of them are not fit for purpose in terms of the amount of space that's allocated to our letter sortation and compared to the amount of parcels and packets that are coming in to the workplace now. So we need a new solution to all of that to make the workplace more bearable, make the work environment. We've got to push on with the culture issues. That's been massive, by the way. And in a couple of areas where we've really put a sustained effort into that, we have seen success. So we can see our relationship in offices that were particularly bad can be rebuilt with the right attitude. And I think what we've had is quite a lot of management kicking back, a lot of management that was still, I think, more loyal to the old regime than where we are now. And that hasn't helped us move some of the things forward and some of the relationships forward. But all in all, I think it's been an extremely tough year. And it's not going to get easier for us because we've still got a lot of issues to try and deal with, tackling the issue of 7-day working, growing the business, new products and services. They're all going to demand different duty patterns, etc. But we've got to make sure that we're there to negotiate it through and get the best deal for our people and get our slice, if you like, in terms of the things we want to achieve. So notwithstanding the difficulty, and I know I'm going to take questions on that as well, it's really important that we keep our eye on the prize. We knew what we were fighting for. We fought for the right. We're in that position to do it. Yes, we've got to deal with the issues that are present at this moment in time, but we've also got to have that eye on the future, not just for this generation of postal workers, but the next generation of postal workers. How we protect this great public service, which absolutely should be protected. It's proven time and time again its worth, but during the last 2 years, it's once again, proved its worth to society. It's still relevant after 500 years, and it's only people like that, like us, that have protected it since it was privatised from it being broken up and lots of money being put in shareholders' pockets. So we've still got to hold that to account, but we still need for it to be successful in the modern day, which does mean reinventing it. And as I say, not just for us, but also for the next generation of postal workers. So there's lots of positive work, I think, that's been overshadowed by some of the activity around revisions. But we have put in interventions about putting more decision making down to local level, and that's what we will continue to do. People in the workplace need to be able to make those decisions at the moment a solution is required, and those interventions, as I say, are being pushed down on resourcing and other issues. So a really, really tough year, Scott, but one that suggests that everything we fought for is still on the table. We're still influencing, and we've got a massive opportunity next year to influence the future as well.
Absolutely. And to be fair, I think there's a comment from someone called Simon Walton, and I think that's quite a fitting payment where you're saying about keeping the eye on the prize, and I'll bring it up there, and it's self-explanatory really. If you put it and gauge it against other companies such as Amazon and such, other people being laid off, yet we've actually, on the back of pathway to change and I suppose COVID accelerating the parcels, we've actually grown, haven't we, as a company, and that's obviously grown the number of staff employed. So one thing of the revisions is that it's given part-timers the opportunity to uplift to full-time, and we've actually seen an increase in units. And certainly when Mark came to visit Leeds, that's exactly what the members were saying in Sheepscare. Is that your experience when you've been out into the field and visiting the sites as well, Terry?
I think, yeah, definitely there's been the opportunity. Well, and I hope everybody seized it, because a massive part of our dispute was the way part-timers were being treated as a flexible resource. So we've now, I think we've nailed that argument. If people are doing those hours on a regular basis, then their contracts should be increased. But in the revision activity, it was all about giving the opportunity as well against growth, as you said, to get our part-timers, those who want it. Some people want part-time, don't they? And absolutely, we respect them as well. But yeah, I think it's been the case. I think the biggest problem we've had has been resourcing. And I think also you have to remember we hadn't done revision activity. Some people have said they hadn't had a revision for 8 years, 10 years, etc. So, and we were going from a standing start, Scott. Now, we knew that. We signed up to it, all of us. We voted on the deal. We signed up to it. But we never had a run-in, did we? We never had time to actually train local reps, perhaps a bit more than they have been. Some of these could be reps, weren't even a rep 8 years ago when the last revision was done. So people were really thrown into it, and I appreciate that, absolutely appreciate that. And that's, I've no doubt for some, that's been a bruising experience. But it's, it's really important that we had the fact that the agreements would be agreed locally. And the vast majority have been. Well, all of them have been, as far as I know, unless they've not gone in. And also the deployment date has been agreed. Now, where we need to get stronger on revision activity going forward as well is if you make an agreement on a revision, but you haven't got the right amount of staff, etc., or there's a reason why that revision is going to go wrong from day one, then it begs the question, why would we agree a deployment date? We really should sort of it's not so much about opposing the change or the revision. It's about saying we'll support it, but we can't agree to its deployment until we know we're in the best possible place for that to work, because that's the only way we sustain quality of service, etc. That means management then pulling their finger out to get the resource in there. So one of the interventions we made, was family and friends and family. The opportunity locally for people to advertise for people. It used to be controlled centrally in Royal Mail, absolutely crazy. And it was taking 3 months to get someone an interview. We've cut through all that, as well as other things, to try and put the decision making down at local level, and we will continue to do that.
Yeah, the Friends and Family initiative I thought was a fantastic, because you've always said about the culture, it's about would you be happy for your children or offspring to come into the company and carry on however many years of full career if need be within the company, and to actually see, it's certainly in the YDC where I am, there is a number of sons and daughters coming through from people, either reps or people working, and that's quite a nice thing to do, because it were always something in the past, wasn't it, where there were always like a family, almost family tree coming through Royal Mail, and that seemed to have stopped during the noughties. So I think that is a fantastic initiative. In terms of the review of the year, it's all stemming really, I would suggest, from the Pathway to Change agreement. That was the first milestone of the year, I would suggest. We were coming out of COVID. We had, that's where first live session as part of Leeds, where all the area reps were involved, and we were engaging with members about the quality of that agreement and all its perks and promises. And the turnout was quite impressive. I've got the figures here, and that agreement actually went through first time, wasn't it? Wasn't just postal, but an online voting, which it's almost symbolic, isn't it, to what happened to the letters industry, to be fair. But 60,000 people voted, which well over 50%. So even if that were a ballot for industrial action, would have got it. So that was the point, and that were driving through all the changes that you've started to outline, such as the growth, the culture, and deploying of the shorter working week. How do you see that agreement evolving? If you could sort of put it in context to how we've moved it along this year into next year, what's the starting point as a year-on-year basis? Where do you think we are?
Well, the amount of work that was done, the commitments we made, as you say, when people accepted that agreement, it was something like 71 commitments, and I think we've landed about 70 of them. Now, when you think that includes the revision activity in every single function in every single unit in the country, that is massive. That's never been done before. That's unprecedented that we did that. So regardless of the scars that people have got from that, coupled with all the other, there was some major stuff in there. We moved forward on the legally binding agreement and et cetera, that's not been done before. So it was really important that we demonstrated that we would deploy our agreement. We would deliver, because the narrative of the previous management was CW don't stick to their agreements and they won't land their agreements, even though most of those, we would say most of the blame for that lied with them. It was easy for them to go to the board and go to the shareholders and say it's all because of the CWU. So effectively, when we got that agreement, we had another chance to really impose ourselves, but show that we're the ones who understand the industry, we're the ones who know it, and we know how it can better itself in the future, or reinvent itself and grow the business. So we've been claiming that right back, since 2010, that we wanted to grow the business, etc., etc. So it was really important that we demonstrated we were committed to that agreement, and we've done that. Now that has given us a good foundation to argue out some of the things that we've always wanted in terms of recruitment and all the things you just touched on, and in terms of the culture and putting the decision making down at a local level, etc. We have earned the right once again by the way we've deployed our agreement. Now, to do that also in an environment where we're with COVID for the past 2 years, and I think I've got to be honest with you, where I put a shout out for people, my wife, my daughter, they both work in the NHS. The NHS key workers, I think they're in the same place. I think people are exhausted. I think our members are exhausted because, our members will have been covering for people have been isolating, people have been off sick, people, then we had to compensate for social distancing in the workplace, one in a van, people getting buses out on delivery, etc. I think like everyone, like the nation, we thought that would be for a few weeks or period of time. Here we are 2 years, and here we are as we sit here this evening, it's kicking off again. Lots of our offices now are saying they've got breakouts of COVID. My wife has got COVID, actually. So, we're still here, and I think people are just tired of that. A lot of people haven't had a proper holiday. So psychologically, I think it's been really tough for key workers and anyone else during this particular time. But to deploy a major agreement at the same time as well, it was really it was a massive ask. It was a massive ask, and I think more than anything that demonstrates not only our commitment to the agreement, but it just shows how special our members are and why all the issues that are bothering them now need to be addressed, and the company's got to recognise their contribution.
Absolutely. And in terms of the shorter working week, Terry, I think that's been a long-standing goal and policy, and it started. It didn't start this year, to be fair, did it? But we just continued that journey this year as part of the pathway to change. And how do you see, or when do you see that shorter working week then being finally deployed? Because I know we sort of spoke last week briefly, but what sort of your vision as regards that, or is that sort of part of the negotiations into next year?
Well, as we go into next year, there's still lots of that to do. The CW policy in the dispute, and we laid all that out to management just before we got the pathway to change agreement. We didn't get all that detail that we wanted in the agreement. Basically, that set up a framework for taking that forward. So that's still got to be negotiated, our vision of the future. We all know, potentially when I've done site visits, especially in delivery, where many people say to me, we're at breaking point with delivery spans, etc. The way we're doing delivery, this is what people say to you face to face. And I can see the difference massively from when I was a postman. So these things have got to be addressed, and we always knew they had to be addressed. If you read the agreement, people, I suppose they put it to one side and never read it again for a lot of people, and I understand that. But for us, that's our guide of how we're meant to be approaching the future. So when we go into the new year, we got pay coming up in April. You got inflation going through the roof, so abnormally, etc. That's going to have an impact on everything. But my belief is, and this is what we're trying to do at the moment, my belief is the right time in the new year, early in the new year, to lay out our vision for the next 3 years, which would secure the 35-hour week, which would talk about how many days people work. We need to seriously start looking at the 7-day, because quite honestly, the work has picked up over the weekend. And in our game, we are a delivery company, first and foremost, whatever services we're delivering. And we know that delivery world has now switched to 24/7. It's a 7-day-a-week world, the world we live in. So we've got to make those adjustments. How are we going to cover that? How are we going to deal with that? If that workload increases to the same level of Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday weekends, well, how are we going to deliver that then? And what is the just reward for our members? So, I think arguably, I'd say as an headline, this is me personally speaking, we could say no one should be on more than a 4-day week. Why wouldn't people have 4 days on, 4 days off? Why wouldn't we have 3-day weeks? Why wouldn't we, now if you get the 35-hour week, you can do that realistically with 35 hours and our paid meal breaks. You could do that realistically, and people would have far more recovery time, because fatigue is an issue. We got an aging workforce, but also we got the other aspects of it. We want to grow the business. I actually think if you're looking at it from a survival of the business point of view, I think there's things coming in our direction, Scott. So things like the green agenda are coming in our direction, and they're going away from the people like Amazon. We've seen their employment models and how they get away with it, but that which is certainly not for us. But listen, there's nothing greener than delivering on foot. Nothing greener than delivering on foot. So if you merge that with ways of working where we can support people delivering on foot in terms of fatigue or the workload that they're carrying, if we can come up with that, and we also put Royal Mail serious about electric vehicles on the street, as that law becomes tighter on companies and that pressure on companies, then people like Amazon, where they rely on that bogus self-employed model, someone pulling up in their own car, which unfortunately are normally quite old, etc. That workforce is not going to be able to go out and buy an electric vehicle. And many towns and cities where you've got mayors now, elected mayors, etc., they're all really pushing the green agenda stuff. And I think that moves in our direction. I really do. So the work that we've done, magnificent work that our members have done on the COVID tests, collection and delivering the COVID tests, that suggests to us really strongly we could have a medical provision that we could deliver, whether it's delivering people's prescriptions, but getting involved in that care side in society. Everyone knows that a lot of social services have had their budgets cut, government putting the squeeze on them, etc. There could well be services there that we provide, which would enhance our role in society. I often say I think Royal Mail is one of the greatest inventions of our social history, and I think it still can be in the modern day, Scott. So I know the difficulties, and I understand why people get dragged down by that, the daily difficulties that we still to sort out, but we have to be positive about this organisation going forward, and the fact that we will be able to give decent jobs to the next generation of postal workers, and this great public service will still be there in a modern form in years to come for people. That security for our members, however many years you've got left at work, it's almost priceless job security. In most other industries now, people haven't got that security. They haven't got pensions. We've got our new pension scheme looking like it's going to open now next year, the first of its kind. Lots of really positive stuff coming in now about that. Now, when we first come out with that, the world of pensions was suggesting it was nonsense. Now people are filing in behind us because, we had the courage to go for it. And we got to have the courage, I think, next year to really seriously go for the redesign of Royal Mail and ensure that our members get the benefits out of that. And I can't see 6-day working like some people are still doing now, every day out there, 6 days. It's no wonder people are fatigued with the deliveries and the work on deliveries. I mean, you don't need the brains of Lloyd George to work that out. It's a tough job. It's always going to be a physical job on your feet, on the street, etc. There's going to be plenty of work there, hopefully, for us. But we've got to take account of that. People have got to have recovery time, and they can't be working full out, 6 days a week or whatever, in this modern day. So there's an opportunity, Scott. And I think if we can convince the business about that, then I think that could be our benefit. If we can change how we do the work at the moment, but we say in exchange for that, we want to land that 35-hour week. We still want annual pay rises, etc. If we can pull that trick off, I think, it'll test our people's thought process, but I think it'll be a massive achievement for the union.
Yeah, and do you know something? This key word I think you've been saying is the opportunity, and then that's really what it is. And I think back coming from the function I'm in, which is network, and 2007 brought an opportunity for professional drivers back then when, funny enough, you negotiated the PDA. Some controversy there from different opinions at there. For me, it were a fantastic agreement, and I'll still stand by that. And we're still using that agreement to give us opportunity going forward. So we've had that annual, or more or less an annual revision activity. So we're quite used to it. And when we're talking about shorter working weeks, that's exactly what we've adopted. Where now 2/3 of our duties are either 3 or 4 day working. And, with the the workforce getting older, a lot of them are drawing the pension, but still working, but they're not interested in the overtime so much. So, this 3 and 4 day working is very much in keeping with what you're saying. And sort of fatigue. So opportunity definitely. And Chris Allen, I'd like to give Chris a special mention. He's the rep at Holbeck Delivery Office in Leeds 11. A passionate supporter of you, Terry. And he's definitely in agreement with the 4-day weeks is the future. He's a rep that has secured 100% membership in his unit, but first time while ever he's been there, which is fantastic. We went down, did some special photos for him and the members down there. Unfortunately, one of his members did pass away with COVID, so I certainly hope your wife recovers well quickly, and that funeral's on the 29th of December. But yeah, it's opportunity definitely. So the CDC scheme, funny enough, when we arranged this session, the following day it sort of announced for next year, wasn't it? So that I know this is a key sort of development this year, really, about the CDC scheme. So exactly what does that mean next year? Does that mean that Parliament will finally rubber stamp it in the summer and then it'll be deployed, say, in September, or will there be a period just after the rubber stamping?
Well, the legislation they're saying, that's what their announcement was. So it's out there now for amendment, but or consultation. But we're at the stage now, it's like the second time in the parliamentary processes, which beg a belief, by the way, in terms of timescales. But that should be fine. So they've nailed their colours to the mast. It's going to be August. What will then happen is whoever wants to open, so the legislation totally will be there. Whoever wants to open a CDC type scheme would then have to make an application to the pensions regulator, and the regulator then decides whether you're fit and proper structure or whatever scheme you want to open is appropriate. Now, don't forget these people, the Department of Work and Pensions, the pensions regulator. We've been working with them all the way through since 2018 when we came up with the agreement for that scheme. So we would hope that when we make our application, we're pretty much nailed on. So then it depends how long they want to take. So they're going to want to give sufficient time to okay the scheme. I don't think they're just going to want to nod it through. But as I say, because we've been working with them, you would think we know and understand exactly what we've got to cover off when we make our application. So it could be, Scott, it really depends how long they want to take to say they accept the application. So at the moment, I think the sensible money for us is October, that the scheme would open. I just love it to be next year. We've had so many knockbacks, so many disappointments, Brexit, government didn't function for 2 years, COVID, so many things that have delayed it coming in. But to the point, by the way, I think in the DC scheme, and without question, the major beneficiaries are going to be the people that are in the DC scheme at the moment. The DC scheme now is covering off about 80,000 people. I think for instance, I think 30,000 have either left the business, but they've still got whatever pot they'd built up in the DC. But it's still about 50,000 of our members that are in that DC scheme. Well, don't forget, everyone will go into the new scheme. Everyone. When that scheme opens, our new scheme, it's going to have somewhere in the region of circa 160,000 people in it, because it's all the managers as well, of course. So everyone goes, it's a massive scheme. It'll be a massive news, and there's a lot of responsibility on us making it work, because as you know, we've come up with the only answer that's out there at the moment to still give people a wage in retirement that we think ordinary working people need to have dignity in retirement, run alongside their state pension. DB schemes are closing hand over fist. And if they do still exist, the chances are they're close to new entrants, which means at the moment, there's only one option out there at the moment, DC. So big moment, big responsibility, big moment. But it's fantastic, and we are, we're getting just credit for that, and I think there'll be even more noise when it comes in, Scott.
Makes it. I mean, I quite like how it's been built up, the CDC, CDC, because what's happened is we use effectively the industrial strength of the CW within the Royal Mail side to convince the employer to come on side with us, and we're utilising other I suppose, professionals to convince the political mindset cross-party to actually deliver the scheme. And I'm sort of trying to draw a little bit of comparison to, I suppose, how Dave Ward talks about the collectivism in society and in the not just the workplace, but actually the community. And this, I suppose, is a key example where we can actually influence change beyond just the workplace, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important as a trade union we highlight and influence the need, for workers to have the right deal, new deal for workers, etc., etc. Is because, and it's not, you can't say to people, I understand this, you can't say to our members that are having aggro in the workplace at the moment, well, you're lucky. You want to see what these other put in, and that's not the answer, is it? That's not what we do as a trade union. I mean, we've raised the bar, but as well as highlighting it to the rest of the trade union movement and beyond, I mean, we've also got a responsibility to constantly raise the bar ourselves in terms of the agreements we get. So I think we can really point a number of things that this union's achieved over the years in terms of our pay and our pension, the job security aspects. I mean, we've been privatised 9 years or something like that. We still haven't had one compulsory redundancy in this trade union. They know we'd kick off if they tried to suggest that, but we haven't been in that position at all. We've defended ourselves when we've really had to. So then the 4 years of dispute, I call it, a little break in the middle when we got the 4 pillars. But then within months, they changed the CEO and put Rigo back there, and it all kicked off again, didn't it? Because those people's vision of the future was about less jobs, was about breaking up this business. I mean, where we were. Parcel Force was gone. The union, in our dispute, pulled Parcel Force back in, and rightly so, into the under the corporate umbrella, and we're still looking after that as well. So I don't think there's any other privatisation that is still in the same shape and structure that it was 9 years later than when it got privatised. But we've still got a rep in every work, or the right to have a rep in every workplace on every shift. Lots of unions are not in that position, and there's lots of workers who haven't even got a union. I mean, just imagine if we hadn't been there, Scott. Just imagine what Royal Mail would look like now, 9 years on, if this union hadn't been there. So, you have to look at that to acknowledge our strength. We continue to take things forward. Even if you add up the dispute years, once we got deals, we got pay deals. So we've constantly had pay deals. National Health, they had a pay freeze for years, didn't they? And then it was a 1% only and things like that, sort of non-negotiable, just being done to them, and all these sort of things. So, it is difficult. Life's difficult now. It's really tough. Our job, the job of Royal Mail, has been hugely undermined by cheaper providers. I feel sorry for them people that are doing them jobs, but the Amazons of this world, the Yodels of this world, whatever, they're just bogus self-employed, easy to undercut Royal Mail. But we've kept our nerve, haven't we? We haven't blinked. We've kept fighting, and we're not going to blink now. It's been a tough year, and there's some genuine reasons why people are hacked off, whether it's because of 2 years of COVID or whether it's because of the changes that haven't gone well in a workplace. But they're all resolvable. But we haven't had no compulsory redundancy. We haven't had pay cuts. We haven't had our allowances torn up. We're still defending everything. And like I say, we're still going to land a decent pension for people. We're still fighting our corner. And when it didn't exist in this country, we created it. It's what we've got to do now with Royal Mail. Too many businesses, when I say things are coming towards us, I look at the history of some of the battles that have gone in the trade union, Scott. So, the docks got destroyed by containerization. The print got destroyed, by technology. Now, look where we were with technology. We've totally turned that round now. All this where they were going to track people all around the office and determine your workload or your duty or disciplines by the technology you're holding in your hand. We're not in that position. We're still in a position to protect our members on all these issues. The mining industry got destroyed by Thatcher and her view to undermine it. I mean, now it would be in difficulty because of the green agenda. But I think because we fought our corner and we're still in the game, I actually think it's coming back towards us. And I've already said that with the green agenda and things like that. We say to the company, we should electrify our fleet. We should then have consolidation points on the edge of every town and city. And when they make the decision, you can't come into that town or city unless you've got an electric vehicle. So many other providers and companies are going to have to come to us, our consolidation point, and we would take the work in. That's, there's a real opportunity for us if we want to seize it as a business. So where people were talking about declining letters, it's falling away, no one wants a Royal Mail anymore. I think, ironically, out of COVID, people have realised just how special it still is. Postal workers always get through. We don't leave anyone behind. Any address in this country we visit, we can build on that with, if there's a entrepreneurial sense, how can you not build on something that delivers to every single address in the country 6 days a week or 7 days a week, if that's the case? We can protect our existing people, but more importantly, provide really decent job to a generation that have got very little chance of getting a decent job at the moment in terms of security and terms and conditions.
I think the COVID situation, where that doesn't discriminate against anybody, doesn't matter where you come from, who you are. I mean, Royal Mail, in using the same analogy, doesn't discriminate against who you are, where you are. I think that's quite similar, although a positive similar. So, I mean, one other thing that we actually managed to secure, really, and something that we actually were pushing the business on was the non-service days, wasn't it, Terry? So where the bank holidays this year, exception, is it once every 11 years or something, or once every blue moon, that the bank holidays don't correspond to the traditional Christmas Day, New Year's Day and Boxing Day situation. And, I think if it weren't us pushing the business, then perhaps this clarity from Ofcom would never have come. And we could have well ended up with a position where either our members were not getting paid for not attending, or, similar bogus employment models. So would you agree with that as a sort of summary?
I mean, credit to Davey Robertson and Mark Bolsh for pushing the issue. So them guys operationally sort of get in there and plan the Christmas, and it was a no-brainer, wasn't it? And to be honest, I think the business were behind the game with it. I don't think it was necessarily they was opposed to it. They were just behind the game and hadn't made the decision. So anyway, fortunately, the representation was made, and it's there, Scott. So we move on. It's just another example, though, where we've dug in. It's like where we've dug in on the recruitment and on issues like that. With a number of levers we've put in place for people to address some of their concerns locally. People have to pick them up, Scott. We can lay out here. We keep putting out joint statements, like going over the 70 hours, where managers have been saying you can't have an earnings package. It's absolute nonsense. It's because local managers have got to step up and stand up if someone above them is saying you can't have it. It's ridiculous when we've had walks not going out and things like that, where we've been denying our own skilled workforce the opportunity when they're prepared to do more hours to get that work delivered. So you run into these things which you think, it just beggars belief that you have to deal with these things. But we just keep dealing with it. We just keep pushing. And I think it will go in the right direction. I think we're getting it exactly right, that people locally should have the authority or the autonomy to make decisions within parameters, of course, but far more opportunity to make the right decision as they see it in their local office. But once you give people that, then they got to take it up, haven't they? Our reps have got to take up that challenge, and so have the local managers. You don't change that overnight. Not when you've come from a period of 4 years where we was at each other's throat, and it couldn't have been more adversarial, could it? No. So there's a lot of baggage there from local managers, maybe local reps, etc., throughout the organisation area, divisional, lots of baggage. But I think we're getting there. I think gradually managers are realising that this is a different era, and they need to get on board, or I think they're going to run into problems, to be honest.
Absolutely. And I'd like to pick up on the green agenda and this future planning aspect, because I think it's quite key, and I think you've labelled it quite well. But what sort of conversations are having from the Royal Mail side of things about the investment and the planning in the areas, like you said, where they may be looking at some delivery officers and replacing them where they need to be? Because I mean, certainly there's units in the Leeds area, Wakefield area, and they're not fit for purpose, and actually they need a new building. So, what sort of conversation you're having with the business about their intention of investing in new property, strategically placed, as you've said, perhaps on the cusps of major cities or towns, to sort of build this network that, quite frankly, when you're driving around the motorway, you can see Amazon doing the same with warehouses, less so with that local touch in terms of a delivery office.
Well, I mean, there's so much that we would want invested in, Scott, to be honest. Before the German post office was privatised, there was a massive investment in it. That never happened with Royal Mail. So we know for a long time our estate is part of the reason we've done the culture stuff and the trust surveys and all that. Is about the environment, about the people are working in. We were visiting places that were appalling, really. So up in the standard of cleaning, all that sort of thing is really important. How can I put it? There's only so much liquid in the pot. Let's put it that way, Scott. So we can go in the room and ask for massive investment in the fleet in terms of the green agenda, which we're going to have to do. The company's going to have to do. We could say we want massive investment in property. We absolutely want massive investment in our people in terms of wages or shorter working week, longer beds, longer in them. So, but there has to be a balance, Scott, and I'm sure everybody understands that. There has to be a balance. You could, if you went too hard, you could bankrupt the company overnight, couldn't you? So you're talking about everything you touch in Royal Mail was so huge. I don't know if you heard, I did a piece on radio the other day, and I said that 1 in every 200 people is employed by Royal Mail, and they were totally shocked by it. But it's absolutely true. So everything we touch is millions of pounds. Everything we want. If we all wanted new trainers tomorrow, it'd be millions of pounds probably. So there's got to be a balance. It's absolutely right that all those things are on the agenda and we keep pushing them. But we're going to want a bit of each, aren't we? We can't just go with one and not do the other. So getting the balance right, how we utilise our offices, how are we going to? It's not about doing away with them. One of the things we insisted was to keep the number of mail centres, RDCs, in the agreement. We should be utilising that. Our view is we should be getting closer to the company, not customer, not further away. And I think, we're okay. We've confirmed that in that agreement. That's what we'll do. If there's delivery office mergers, will it come to pass that actually that wasn't the greatest idea? You're better off being in the locations and you're having a new... So, they seem like good ideas at the time, but I think with our new agenda, that's going to start questioning some of that. So whether that would be the direction of travel going forward or whether we would just find a new local delivery office, time will tell. But the more services we get down local, we get down closer to the customer, I think it begs the question that consolidation of offices and putting bigger distances in and things like that isn't necessarily always the right decision.
And I suppose in terms of, being close to the, the delivery office, I suppose, model is probably the better option, where you're having them structural revisions, and then it's the amount of time traveling from the delivery office to your first delivery point, isn't it? So bigger the catchment area, then more time traveling. So yeah, I see that. So I've got to admit, I think when I set up the YouTube channel 3 years ago, it hit 100 subscribers. So what I did is I captured a lot of your comments, because you're quite funny with the flippant marks, and the Lloyd George one is one, and the Mary Celeste another, and so it was something that Dave Hutchinson mentioned today, and it might be another one you could throw in when you're dealing with Royal Mail, because I don't know if it actually exists, this as a statement, but he said it's Janet and John. So as it's black and white type thing. So we were using this term Janet and John, and I think that you can just imagine what Royal Mail directors be saying when you start talking about a Janet and John situation, I think. But sorry, I would digress. So the other thing, I think, I don't want to labour it too much, is about the average holiday pay. There's obviously mixed feeling. It is a somewhat contentious, depending whether you actually got paid anything or not. But I think as an agreement, it deals what it needs to deal with. And, you put it, I think, absolutely bang on. It is a safety net. And actually, it's it's a way of refocusing the business that actually they can't abuse the way overtime was done before. And actually it's a way and a further mechanism, another, I suppose, weapon in our armor, isn't it? That we can use that to actually prove that it's more cost effective to give proper jobs and actually have the hours invested in people on a contractual basis and not based on a whim.
I've lost you there a minute, Scott. Oh, got you back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I just paused, to be fair, Terry. But yeah,
Okay. All right.
Have I understood that agreement, do you think?
I've got it. Listen, and I've heard the noise. And do you know what? It's not it's not that I'm having myself or being overconfident here. It hurts when people are moaning about, or agreement, or you haven't done the right deal. You question yourself all the time about that because, in the negotiations, we were so strong in those negotiations about getting 2 years back pay. Every conference decision about that was really about part-timers. If you'll recall that, it was mainly about getting the just rewards for part-timers. So many part-timers were working over their time. Now, there weren't many disagreements coming in from local offices saying this is outrageous and, standing up for those part-timers, etc. So we can all look in the mirror. The legislation itself really came about because of people that are bogus self-employed who don't get anything, don't get sick pay, don't get holiday pay, don't get anything. So giving them employment status and saying they should have some holiday pay. All of our members get holiday pay. So, let's get it right. But when we had to determine what is regular, and people, I get this because people think you could just do a simple thing, but say, okay, whatever I've done over the last 12 weeks, I'll average it up. Now, Royal Mail weren't prepared to do that. I don't really want to pay out anything on average holiday pay, do they? So it was all the court cases that we managed to generate because it had been drifting since 2014, to be quite honest with you. And we managed to get the pressure point there with the business to do a deal. But if you go to court, the big determining factor is what is classed as regular. And in our industry, where the amount of overtime that's available, and we had legal people in the room and everything else, so, everyone else who's entitled to their opinion or think they know better, we had all that advice in the room as well. In our industry, 8 hours a month, and we got it down to that, 8 hours a month is not massively unachievable for the vast majority of people in our industry. It isn't. And quite frankly, if you're doing less than that, your average holiday pay over 6 months isn't worth a lot of money. You got to go and do the math on it. So once we got that secured, the 8 hours, and we've got a review in the agreement, what we knew for sure is all the part-timers that had been doing way above their hours, etc., and all the people who do a lot of overtime or rely on a lot of overtime, who weren't doing SAs, because to be honest, if those hours were regular, they should have been turned at the very least into SAs because people get SAs on their holiday. So that's where it's a safeguard thing. It might come back to that in a minute. But people hadn't negotiated that. Even people now that are doing lots of ad hoc overtime, the real question is, the real game in town is to get it as an SA. Then you ain't even got to worry about 8 hours a month or anything else. You get it paid on your 4 weeks of holiday. So, but in the event people don't, there's 8 hours a month people have got to do. And you've got to do that for 6 months. Now people know what it is they've got to do. I'm pretty sure postal workers haven't changed that much since I was wearing those shoes, and they'll work that out. They'll make sure that they hit the line so as they get their average holiday pay if that's what they want, and if they're doing regular amounts of overtime. So, but the problem was always going to be the back pay, isn't it? Because people didn't know what the criteria was. So if you're working next to someone who just says, "Oh, look, I've just copped 300 quid," and you haven't got anything, you're going to kick off. Listen, I know that. No one's got to educate me on that. I know that it would have been no different back in the day when I was in the office. So because some people have got something, some people haven't, you get them problems. But I mean, we've carried on the talks. People said there was genuine ones who couldn't meet it. There might have been in Waddington's. We're now in talks now to say, let's look at that. If that's been unfair to people, then let's get a solution for that. People that were on jury service, we're even looking at the people that were told that clinically they had to isolate, even if they weren't poorly, etc., during the COVID. So we're still ploughing on with that. And I think the next payment, the next one will be the first one where people absolutely knew what they had to do. We've had December removed again because, so that's a pass for the December month. Then we will see the true standing of that agreement, and there'll be a review. But if there is a review, I would imagine it will be Royal Mail saying we want to lift that criteria, because I've got to tell you, over 50,000 people, and that's grown as well. It's possibly more like 60,000 people have had a payment. 60,000 of our members have had a payment, and I'll tell you now, Royal Mail wouldn't want to publish what that bill is, because you're talking about investment in offices that comes to millions of pounds, that back pay. So that isn't that when the employer sees people kicking off about it, they probably wish they hadn't done the deal, because they certainly didn't expect to have to pay out as much as they did. I think people can say what they like to me. I think that's because the way it was done, and the 2 years, by the way, that was the last thing we got. And even our legal people were amazed we got that. Some people think you can go back 5 years. You can't. No one's had a settlement. In fact, when people were getting claims settled by the business, they was only going back 12 weeks. It was only going back 12 weeks. To get 2 years back pay, which was the last thing, was a huge achievement. But it's one of those achievements that was double-edged, because we've obviously took the stick from people that hadn't met the criteria, who felt they should have had a payment. And I don't suppose we can ever get them to satisfy them with the explanation. But I'll tell you now, going forward, you mark my words, that'll be one of the agreements that people say was a good agreement for our people, especially if you're doing regular overtime.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, I personally think it deals with what it needs to deal with. Absolutely. And, our branch, our committee discussed it at length, and we unanimously endorsed it, which is why we opted to back the agreement. So certainly there'll be no one in Leeds that will be objecting to all those.
Can I say, Scott, sorry, I want to say this as well. So it's really important, because this is about, and this is me talking to our reps and the branch reps, or whoever's on here who's a representative. What we've now got as well is a definition of regular, which is 8 hours a month. So if we've got a part-timer that's doing regular overtime, right, then don't forget, in the 4 pillars agreement, they could have a contract extension. It don't have to be on the same duty that they're doing as a part-timer. So if they're regularly doing over 8 hours, we would ask for them to have if they wanted it, for their contract to be increased, or for it to be an SA, which made sure they got paid it. So that's about negotiating locally. That's about being on top of what's going on in the workplace and going and making the right representation. Because if the manager said no because it's not regular, we would go, well, actually, it is. We have now got a definition of what is regular: 8 hours a month. Increase their contract or give them an SA. That's where people should be, and that's why it's a safety net. Because if you can get those hours either as contract or as SA, you ain't got to worry about average holiday pay, because you get it paid.
And that's extremely well said, as ever, Terry, which is why we've got you to conclude the session today on today's session, because you always deliver. And, I think we're at a time where we're at the end of the hour. There's a few comments I'd just like to put on, more in support, really, of the trade union. So, again, Chris Allen, without the fighting union, we would be well and truly stuffed. We're strong, intelligent leadership. Hat down to you there, Terry. Good communication at all levels. So I hope that's a nod to me as well as Chris Webb, but there we go. We'll stand together. So, yeah, it's a great one. Again, another one there. We've got very blessed to have a union fighting for us. So, again, we have got lots of good and positive comments there. So it's not all negative. And, yeah, really well done. I think, yes, Terry, it's been an incredibly difficult year. But, I think we've got through it okay. And I'm looking forward to how 2022 will shape up as you go in January with whether that's a policy forum and they start approaching the business about moving the CW agenda forward for our members. Is there any comments you'd like to say, Terry, before we close?
Well, only listen, again, to thank everyone. Thank you, Scott. I think it's great that you laid this on. Great initiative for the Leeds branch coming up to do your AGM, I think. So,
yeah,
look forward to seeing you all, everyone next month. But I just want to say to everyone, and I mean this like from the bottom of my heart, I think our members are magnificent. I think our reps are magnificent. Sometimes we get ourselves all bent over shape over issues and the pressures that are going on locally, and we get that. But listen, you don't want a leadership that turns away from the real problems. So as much as we would like to please you in everything we do, we genuinely would rather save you and save this great public service. And I think we have really positioned ourselves to do that. And we're going to have some new thinking going forward. And that will be change. And people don't like change. But that's not a reason to back away from it. To back away from it because people don't like change, it's right for us to negotiate the right benefits. But to back away does you a disservice. You want a leadership that will be strong, has a vision, and ensures that you've still got a decent job in years to come. Or if not, hopefully someone from your family's got a decent job for years to come. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a terrific Christmas and genuinely wish everyone all the best for the new year, Scott, including you, mate.
Thank you very much. And same to you, Terry, and all your family. So without further ado, thanks for watching. Remember, unity is strength, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.